Hello, good evening, good morning, shalom, hola. Welcome to B'nai Baruch's technical lesson for our beginning students. This is the start of a new semester, the fourth in our series of classes, and we welcome you. We want to strongly encourage you to ask questions during the session, and if you have technical problems, you can ask those questions as well. We've made some adjustments since Wednesday night, so hopefully things will go more smoothly. For those of you who are online Wednesday, we had some issues that hopefully are resolved now. We strongly encourage you to ask questions, but please, other than technical questions, keep them relevant to the topic, to what's being discussed and what's being taught. We have a tradition in B'nai Baruch of starting our lessons with an intention. And with the intention, we want to keep in mind why we're here, what we want to accomplish from these lessons. So tonight we begin with an intention from the open book, chapter 5, by Rav Michael Eitman. In order for us to come to the spiritual degree of the Creator, through the desire to receive pleasure, we have to know how to use our vessel in the same way that the Creator uses His attributes. Creation has but one thing, the aspiration for pleasure, whereas the Creator has but the aspiration to give.
Well, welcome to the fall 2008 semester. As you all have seen, there are a lot of changes that you've noticed that are happening with our website, with all of the different, different changes with regard to the class, how we are rearranging the way it used to be, and actually doing a long 6-month semester. It's going to be instead divided up kind of into pieces, but more of a continuous flow instead of a cut 12-week course as it was, a gap in between another 12-week course. It's going to culminate with several different things within it. Within 60 days, you'll have the opportunity, if you so desire, to come to a retreat for all of the Learning Center students. There'll be 400 or 500 people there to be able to test some of the things that you'll be learning over the next 60 days. This course has to do with really the science of Kabbalah. It's a book. It's this book. In Hebrew, it's called Pticha. And you can think of Pticha meaning the preface or preface to a book, sort of an introduction to what's known as Talmud Eser Sfirot. And that preface is about 350 pages long. You must say, well, how long is test? How long is this thing? How long is this Talmud Eser Sfirot? In Hebrew, it's pronounced Ta'as for short. And actually, it's 6 full volumes of information, over 2,000 pages. It's huge. It's giant. What is it? Exactly what are we going to be studying? We're going to be studying no more, no less than the actual skeleton, the actual blueprint of spirituality. What's there? What is it made of? What is it called? These are the things that we're going to be exploring. You're going to be able to ask questions. They're encouraged to. We have them coming in both Spanish and in English, and please feel free to ask as often as you can. I do ask that one thing, and that is that you ask questions that are with regard to our topic, and not just, oh my gosh, what does Kabbalah say about Martians, or what does Kabbalah say about a religion of some sort, or what does Kabbalah say about this or that. Let's try to keep focused upon precisely what we're studying at any given moment, and that we will be able to progress a lot faster. So, what is this all about? What is this study about? In order to answer that, I think what we'll do is we'll start with looking at the way that reality is actually set up. and the story of what's going to transpire in our studies is a developmental process. It starts with a single point, a single desire, this tiny little thing called a will to receive. And actually it isn't a little thing. It's a huge thing. It is simply the desire to receive pleasure. Now, there are all sorts of different kinds of desires. For instance, we have desires on what we can call the still level. A good example of a desire that's on the still level might be to sleep, to be still, to sleep, to rest, that type of thing. To not be doing some function, just a still thing, just being still for a while. That we would get more pleasure out of that, especially when you're tired or when you've been working hard all day. You just want to sit in your chair and relax. Think of it that way. It's the best way to think about it. So we have desires that are based upon the still level. If we look at our environment, at what that might be like, it'd be like a rock that wants to sit there, like a box. It just wants to be there. It doesn't want to go anywhere. In fact, when I move it, I have a force that I have to overcome called friction just in order to move the box. It wants to stay still. Now, second, there's another level of desire. You can call it the vegetative level. What would the vegetative level be like? The vegetative level would be like what a plant might experience. What does a plant want? A plant wants to do things like to grow or to take in nutrients. It wants bare necessities, more or less. It wants. It doesn't really have the ability to move around a lot, nor does it have any desire to. It basically simply has very, very minute, bare minimum desires. And that would be like to eat, like to drink. What it needs in order to exist. It takes in the gases that it needs, called carbon dioxide, in order to exist. And of course it exhales oxygen, which is what we need. Then there's another set of desires called the animal level. Animate, actually. That animate level, all of a sudden this opens up all sorts of desires, doesn't it? We're a lot more familiar with this. Even though we have the still level desire within us, we have the vegetative level. In other words, each of us wants our bare minimum security. Each of us wants shelter over us. Each of us wants to be able to deal with the environment, not be too hot, not be too cold, this type of thing. Each of us wants to eat, drink, keep our body at least breathing, right? Minimal requirements. And then there comes the animate level for even more additional. First of all, on the animate level, it wants to be able to move, right? Any animal wants more than just to stay in one place like a plant. It has a desire for more independence. It also has a desire to be able to obtain things. Not just to catch what's in the air or to catch what's in the soil, but it also will actually go out and actively go get what it wants to eat. On our level, it will do even more. It will actually invent ways to get not only what it needs to eat, but more than what it needs to eat. And then we have this outer layer here of the animate level. This is all still within this one thing that's called animate. And I don't want to confuse you. This is not 4 levels, but see, each one of these levels contains all the rest in them. So we would also have the still, the vegetative, and the animate here. But this outer level here of the animate has other desires. And those desires are for things that other animals wouldn't have, that lower animals wouldn't have, like money, like power, like control, pride, knowledge. These are things that are unique to us, unique to the animal that's known as the Homo sapien, unique to the human being, the corporeal human being. And so there are desires that has specifically to do with this one level. We also, by the way, have the same exact desires that are in the vegetative level, that are in the lower levels of the animate. We all have the same desires as say, a cat. What does the cat want to do? It wants to eat. It wants to sleep. It wants to reproduce. It wants to play. It wants to have some fun. If you pull a string, it will chase it every single time. It's just that we have more desires added on. More desires added on. Now, past that are human desires. Would you believe there's a whole other set of desires? A whole other set of desires. And let's call this, there are several names for it, but in this particular time, we don't want to confuse the matter, so we're going to call it spiritual. Spiritual. So, what are those desires? What's out there? You see, that's what I'm perceiving. I'm perceiving different things, different levels of desire here all the time. Tony went through basically perception of reality for you. And we're doing a slight review here to kind of connect between what we're going to study and what you all went over. But we have this level that's called spiritual. In other words, what do we perceive? We perceive what we can relate to within a given level of desire. So what does that mean? Why can't I perceive something spiritual? What it means is that those desires on all of this level, would you believe they're still concealed? They aren't there yet. They aren't quite there yet. I haven't got them into focus to where I can actually sense something out there. And so what I need is something that will help me out to be able to sense and these desires out here. For instance, I have a desire for food. I'm able to relate to different kinds of food. I'm able to use my senses to be able to sense them. My sense of taste, my sense of smell, my sense of hearing, to hear them cooking. Most certainly, my sense of sight, that I see something that really does look like it's good to eat. I use these, and of course, sense of touch. I use these senses for all of my animate, my vegetative, and my still desires. But what about these spiritual desires? What can I do? Because I really don't have anything to relate to these things with. All that I really feel, as Tony expressed last Wednesday, was that there's this thing called the point in the heart. A desire to do what the Creator does. It's actually a teeny-weeny tiny desire from here. A teeny tiny desire from the spiritual part. So what are we going to do? The whole goal is to uncover that area, this whole spiritual area. I want to uncover all of this so that I'll be able to actually sense out here, to sense more data. By the way, folks, it's a lot more data, a whole lot more data. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to reveal what's out here in this area, all out here, where I can't currently sense anything, and try to find a way to begin sensing something out there, but I have to understand why I can't, what the problem is. Tony went over that just a little bit too. He mentioned things like an equivalence of form that we try to achieve. We have a great equivalence of form with our desire for food, no problem. But the problem is that we don't have an equivalence of form with these particular desires. We aren't able to sense them, just like our eye isn't able to sense something like X-rays or ultraviolet light or infrared light that's beyond the visual spectrum. We have a question from Ross in Australia. Hi, Ross. Does this mean that meditation is just a still or basic desire? Meditation? I see what you're asking. Why do people meditate? People meditate for a variety of reasons. People meditate in order to receive pleasure. But the question is, what kind of pleasure? Some people derive a form of pleasure by simply being still and learning to clear out all sorts of desires in their mind. Nothing. Not having any thought at all. Focusing on my breathing or focusing on something like that. And by the way, some people call that spiritual. Now, they can call that spiritual, and that's no problem, but it's not the spirituality that we're talking about. Our spirituality has a lot of desires in it. It isn't a matter of focusing things out. It's a matter of a whole addition of more stuff in it. But meditation is simply trying to use something in order to get some sort of pleasure. It may be for spirituality, but it isn't going to achieve the same goal as what we call spirituality. Phil in Michigan, is this basically a splitting of consciousness to simple self, then divine consciousness? Thinker apart from thoughts and so forth? No, it's much, much more than that. And we'll get to that. Sultan in England, is Kabbalah map or territory? Kabbalah is blueprint. Kabbalah is actually process. It is the process of the attainment of these desires within me, these desires, these things that we call spiritual desire, these desires that we want to utilize in order to get pleasure, just like we do the rest of these. And we'll have to change from that, by the way. We'll have to change from that. What will this class show? What will we do? We are going to find out that we started this whole process from an initial thought. An initial thought, IT. And everyone, you're going to have to get used to my horrible left hand because it is terrible. I'm not much of an artist, and I do apologize for that. But it starts out with an initial thought. You're going to find out from that initial thought that it's going to go down through a process to where there is a very distinct desire to receive pleasure, and that every desire I've ever experienced has gone through the same process. You're going to discover that from the evolution of this initial huge desire, what's this for? The desire to receive pleasure. I want pleasure. That's it. That's what I live for. That's my existence. That's why I'm on the planet. In order to receive. Now, there's a problem. Isn't there always? In this particular problem. The problem isn't whether or not I receive pleasure. It's the why I receive pleasure. And you're going to find out that this causes all sorts of difficulties for everybody on this planet. You're going to find out that there is a solution. You're also going to find out that it was set up this way. You're going to find out that this thing called a spiritual desire, this thing called the will to receive, another word for it is this thing that's called the creature, what was created, is concealed from two things. It's concealed from this thing called pleasure, that what we experience here every day is certainly not the pleasure we're talking about. So it's concealed from this pleasure, And it's concealed from something else. It's concealed from that there ever was a giver, that there ever was a creator, something that created the creature. It's concealed from all this. So, what in the world is it going to do? And why is it concealed? What we're going to discover is that it does continue on a process to where it conceals itself completely, to where it not only is one single unified desire, but it's broken up into a whole bunch of, yes, you know them as humans, and a lot of other stuff to do. You are going to learn that there is a process of evolution over the last period of thousands of years, to where there begins to become a desire to go back up this same process, and yet the same one that it came down, but to achieve a definite goal, to be able to receive this pleasure, which for some reason, don't know why yet, we don't know why yet, but it lost the ability over here. For some reason, it can't do that over here. For some reason, something's stopping it from receiving all of this pleasure. What in the world could it be? You're going to hear terms such as kli, such as sfirot. You're going to hear terms such as light, or. You're going to hear different types of light, like Or Yashar, or Hosir. You're going to hear all these new names you never heard of. Do not be scared of this. You don't have to memorize it. It's going to be described to you what every single solitary thing is. You're not going to have to worry about that. We're going to take it slow, we're going to take it easy, and we're going to send it all the way through so you understand what happened at the initial point of creation, from here all the way down to where we are today, right here, at the end, right now. And then we're going to discover that this is not the end. We're going to discover that we are not at the end of creation, that we're in the middle of the process, right in the middle of it. And everything that's happening here is part of that process. We're going to discover that slowly through this evolution of desire, through this desire, through the still originally, through the vegetative, through the animate, through the speaking, slowly, another desire emerges. A desire that cannot be satisfied with my corporeal fulfillments. This desire won't be fulfilled if I get more rest or more sleep. This desire won't be fulfilled if I get more food, if I have a bigger home, if I have more money, if I have a nicer car, if I have all the possessions I could hope for. It won't be fulfilled if I have better health. It won't be fulfilled if I have all the honor in the world from every single human on the planet. They all have a great respect for me. It will not fulfill this desire. If I am the smartest human on the planet, if I make Einstein look like an amateur, it will not help. This desire still won't be fulfilled. It's a desire that comes and goes because we have other things in our life that's happening around us that all of a sudden will take over. But this is the desire that this thing called Kabbalah is concerned with. This is the only desire that it's concerned with. And let's take a few questions now. So if I can't back up, I think we have a few. Oh, we have some from our friends down south of the equator. Thank you, Norma, for all your work here, by the way. We have a person that is very precious to B'nai Baruch that helps out with not only our translation, but with helping getting us our questions for all of our English students. So you know, this is also being translated into Spanish. It's an incredible effort that was set up literally in a matter of months, really in weeks, to be able to provide these fantastic people south of the equator, and a little bit north too in Mexico, the ability to access these classes that we have. And Norma played a huge part in that, along with several other people that are just amazing people for us. So thank you, Norma. The question is from Amado Solchaga, I think that's it. Amado, I don't speak Spanish. I apologize right up front, okay? But the question is, how can I modify the intention of my desires? That's a real question, isn't it? How do I modify the intention? Now, you know, that's the whole point, though, Amado. We don't know yet. This is a process. This is what we're going to discover together as we go through this course and as you go through the course with Tony. Each week you're going to come a little bit closer because it's actually a process. What is this process of Kabbalah? It is attaining the ability. Remember me telling you a few minutes ago that there's a reason why this will to receive, this thing called creature, remember me telling you that it stopped being able to receive this incredible pleasure for some reason. What in the world could have happened? Well, something did occur that made it stop. And what really happened is that it realized that it wanted something else even more than just to receive. And what you're talking about, modifying the intention, is what it's all about in order to be able to do what it really wants to do above and beyond just receiving pleasure. You're going to find out that it not only wants to receive pleasure, but it wants to instead not just receive, but to be like the giver of that pleasure. You're going to find out that it's a lot like the story of the wealthy man that he found a friend, a childhood friend, that had fallen on very hard times and had absolutely nothing. And he had loved this friend so much, and he had looked for him, and he finally found him. And he began to give him this and that and some other thing because he wanted to help him so bad. And he said, is there anything else I can give you? I will be happy to give you all that I have. And this person that was down on his luck, and now he was prosperous, and now he had a lot of things because of his quite wealthy friend. And he looked at him and he says, yes. He said, I want you to give me the ability to be like you. I want to do what you do. I want to be the giver and not just the receiver. And this is exactly what happens to this thing called a creature. It gets tired of being just the receiver. It wants to be like the one that created it. It wants to be a giver. It wants to be able to bestow. And this, as Tony mentioned this twice, as a matter of fact, in his lesson on Wednesday. And to boot, what you're talking about, Amado, is the action that causes it. It's the ability to be able to relate not to the pleasure I'm getting, but to whom I'm going to benefit. And how can I cause that to happen? That will come in the lessons. There's something that has to happen here. In fact, we'll talk about it for just a moment in just a bit here. Carmen from Venezuela. If we adapt to the spiritual cloth, isn't it an expression of freedom of choice? If we adapt to the spiritual cloth. I assume what Carmen is saying is if we attempt to achieve this ability to do what the Creator does, isn't it an expression of freedom of choice? Actually, it's following one of our desires. I'm not going to go way into this because in the next couple of weeks, there's going to be a very specific hour-and-a-half-long lesson, Carmen, on this one thing, and that is freedom of choice, freedom of will, whether or not we have freedom. And do we have freedom? Can we choose? Is there something that we can choose? Let's go with another question here. This is from Rosa in New Mexico. In Kabbalah, are all of us the same, or are there special places for rich people? Rosa, I hope you're not rich, because guess what? You'd be disappointed. There aren't any special places for rich people. People are all the same, all will to receive, and that's it. It doesn't matter whether you are rich, poor, whatever. It has to do with your desire. What do you want? Rosa, I don't care if you're rich or poor. Is your interest money? Or is it possibly something for something else? Could it be for something spiritual? Could it be for something that cannot be satisfied in this corporeal world? That's what matters on the spiritual level, not money. Question from Bibiana, I hope that's right, in Argentina. Why and what for do we die? Why do we die? What is the reason for it? To put it very simply, it is part of the preparation process to achieve the ability to do what the Creator does. And it's through a period called in its time. What does it mean? It means if we aren't helping along the process, if we aren't studying Kabbalah, if we're just going through regular life, doing this, that, and some other thing, another word for it is called the path of pain. And I'm having to change slowly because I'm having to be constantly pushed from behind to change. I don't realize it. I don't sense it. I don't see what's happening to me, but I'm going through this process of preparation, and we'll call this preparation. Prep. I'm going through this process unconscious that I'm going through it. I don't even know I'm going through it. Bibiana, I have no idea. All that I know is something's causing me to do what I do. I'm constantly being pushed. I'm constantly being prodded here. And on occasion, so I'm going through periods here, and on occasion, I run out of steam. And I have to start over. Desires start dying down a little bit in this current situation that I'm in. And so basically what I have to do is I have to, just like you, take off this shirt when it gets dirty or at night, and then in the morning you dress again. You're going to end up doing the same thing here. And by the way, you have many times already. Let's take a few questions from our students in the States here. And elsewhere, oh, we have some from Israel, there's several here. Let's take a couple more here, and then we'll continue. George from West Virginia. Hi, George. Is the 5 desires the same as the 5 worlds mentioned in the introduction? Are the 5 desires the same as the 5 worlds mentioned in the introduction? And of course, you're talking about, with Tony, you're talking about the world of Adam Kadmon, the world of Absolute, of the world of Bria actually, Yetzirah, and Asiya, right? No, the 5 desires I spoke of there do have a connection to them, but they aren't them. No, they're not. But they do have a connection to them. I'm talking, the 5 desires that I spoke of here are purely corporeal. Purely corporeal, that's all. And what I was really talking about here, when I'm talking about this preparation period, all along through here, is the development of this desire that's actually in concealment. So it started here and goes all the way across, and basically we have the same thing here. But we'll get into that a little bit more in a bit. What's an example of a spiritual desire? The desire to receive spiritual pleasure, the desire to receive a pleasure that is completely, totally beyond my wildest imagination at this point. It's a desire to receive pleasure by doing what the Creator does. This place called spirituality is above and beyond one's wildest expectations. Do you know where the article is? Reveal the Creator? Would you look? Thank you. Tim, I'll get back to you in just a little bit here. Kara, have any of your students reported experiencing a physical sensation when studying Kabbalah? A physical sensation. Boy, I hope not. Yes, they do. Several. Oftentimes, it will make one sleepy. A lot. Why? Here's why. Because what we're studying deals with these desires in this spiritual part, and one's corporeal interests are in these desires. Sleep, shelter, warmth, food, family, sex, money, power, control, honor, knowledge. This is where one finds ways to get their pleasure. This is where one is able to get a hold of something. Where one is able to sense enjoyment in life. But here, one doesn't quite have the vessels to be able to sense any kind of pleasure here, and so they sometimes don't see what's coming to them, where this is all headed. And we are told that the pleasure in spirituality, that what we really experience here is not pleasure in the least. It just gets to the borderline of pleasure, but we never experience it. It is told to us that all of the pleasure ever experienced in all throughout time, by everybody combined, including animals, if you include all of that pleasure together up to this millisecond right now, and we compare it with a grain of sand, one moment of spirituality is like the entire beach. Like the entire beach. Abe in Florida, where do thoughts come from? This is one that you will also be studying. It'll be in an article that you're going to get to study with Tony in a bit. He's going to address it specifically. I'll give you the short version and let him give you the detailed version, Abe. In truth, thoughts are a consequence of desire. What does that mean? That means that I want something, and then I'm going to make a calculation on it. I have a desire. I sense that I want something, whatever it is, food, a drink of coffee. I want a drink of coffee. And now a question arises. How much work is going to be required in order for me to obtain a drink of coffee? Is it a matter of me having to reach over, like right here, pick it up off its little stand, and take a sip? Is that all the work that's required? Or would I have to get up right now, go in and make an entire pot of coffee, and go to all that trouble? And I don't necessarily feel like that. In other words, what I'm doing here is I'm going to weigh some options. I'm going to weigh this thing out, Abe. I'm going to make a calculation of greatest amount of pleasure for least amount of work. I need to know. In other words, if I'm going to say that it's going to cost me 2 grams of work to reach over here and grab this, but it's going to give me 20 grams of pleasure to be able to drink the coffee. But it would cost me 30 grams of work if I have to go into the other room and get the coffee. So then the work would outweigh the pleasure, and I wouldn't do it. Yet just reaching over and grabbing the coffee, that's a done deal. I'm going to go ahead and do it. So I made this comparison. I made this calculation. And this is exactly what our mind does. It compares two different things. It compares the amount of pleasure that's in potential here for me to gain as compared to the amount of work that's required to get that pleasure. So what are thoughts? They are a calculating effort, a calculating machine, which is there for one reason, and that is to determine, thank you, that is to determine whether or not it's worth it to go after desire. Let's get back to when we were looking at a question up here with regard to what is spiritual desire, spiritual pleasure, even experiencing a physical sensation when studying Kabbalah. Everyone wants to know, what's it like? What's it like to enter spirituality? What would these sensations be like? It's always a question. And there was a great Kabbalist, his name was the Ari. His greatest student, his name was Chaim. He tried to describe it. Tried to describe what just this moment of spiritual pleasure would be like as he was first experiencing spirituality. What would this feel like? What's this really like? What's the carrot dangling out there for me? This is what he wrote. What opened to me that moment is impossible to transfer into words. It was an impact. It is something that you would not imagine. It is something you would not imagine about spirituality. It is as though you did not dream of this spirituality, about the opening of this new quality in yourself, this spiritual vision, perception. You don't realize at all how far you are now from the truth when you're in concealment. This sensation feels like an earthquake is erupting under my feet. This intoxication given from knowledge of absolute beauty and perfection. No, all of these words cannot describe it. Mankind can't even imagine how poor our language is. Words can't express anything. Nothing. Our language is not ready to express the spiritual world. We are so primitive with our angular brains to understand the upper world. It's impossible to understand. You feel it with your heart by song and by sleepless nights. Hardest desires in Kabbalah. It needs to be comprehended live, though. This is because it can fulfill only that place in a person which he has prepared for spirituality. Oh, yeah, you're going to have to do something here. You're going to have some work here. You're going to have to go through a preparation. It is as if we search for decades for a small door somewhere in a huge kilometer-sized wall and suddenly find it there. Like I wasn't searching for it all the time and it was just always there. No, it can't be explained in words. Ari looked at me. He was with the Ari. The Ari looked at me and he smiled. He knew precisely what was occurring and occurring within me, and only with him could I describe myself, for he felt it from above and what stands behind every word. And suddenly I can see it clearly. I understand every one of his words. The Ari and I as one together forever, and we keep up all mankind and all people for everyone. Their souls represent a single whole, like informed vessels. It is like when the Kinneret, for you all that have not been to Israel or not Jewish, the Kinneret is a sea called the Sea of Galilee, is what you would know it as in Israel. The Kinneret overflows sometimes, small rivers pouring fresh water to the Dead Sea, and everyone's spiritual comprehending fills with a new jet of life for all mankind. See, we can't even get close to this last paragraph of understanding. What? As you can imagine, yes, something is definitely waiting. It's the carrot that's held out there for us. Doug from Delaware. I have a question that I hope can clear something up for me. With the Creator consisting totally of the will to bestow, and that bestowal intended to fill the receiver with complete fulfillment, does this mean that the that the Creator's intent comes from a desire of the Creator? An intent to create implies motive, and motive means act. Creation has a goal to receive something. If the Creator is completely the will to bestow, how can there be motive on the Creator's part? How can the Creator have some kind of desire? Here's the problem that you're suffering from, Doug. You're wanting... Let's go on forward here. You're wanting to know something about the Creator during this initial thought or before what the Creator is like. And here's the difference, Doug. We don't relate to the Creator from the Creator's point of view. We relate to the Creator based on our reception of Him, not based upon how He is. This is the way we view it as coming from the Creator. This is an important point to remember. One only has what is, one only can judge by what his eyes see. And this is another important point by Kabbalah. No matter what Tony tells you, no matter what I tell you, no matter what you hear in these classes, which is coming not from us, it's coming from the Ari, from Baal Salam, from Rabash, from Rav Lightman. And that lineage of teacher to student, teacher to teacher to student, teacher, and on. This entire wisdom is always based upon not what you believe, not what you hear and accept as fact, but what you're able to uncover yourself. And Doug, this is what one is able, this is one of the places one is able to uncover it. One is able to uncover that this is how it appears in one's vessels, in one's sensations. Is that the way it is? That's the way it appears to you. So we have to talk only from our perspective, only from what we sense. I can sit here and say, well, you know, the cap on this pen is not really blue. It's actually reflecting all of the blue. It's actually not blue. How can I say that? There's no such thing as blue. It's actual light that it does it. There's really no such thing as a color. Well, what I'm doing here is I'm getting real philosophical over whether or not this color blue exists. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Who knows? In my senses it does, though. To me, it's blue. And this is one of the things that you'll find. This is one of the things you'll discover. Michelle from Jerusalem. During First Temple period, did the creature experience spiritual closeness to the Creator much more than we do now? Michelle, we don't at all now, so definitely so. The temple, you can't think of it in terms of a corporeal period in history. If you're thinking of that, there's no problem here. We don't even have to talk about it. We're talking about corporeal people. If we're talking about the spiritual thing called temple, the creation of the temple, the place, Israel's place in spirituality, Israel being the desire to do what the Creator does, the soul, of course, it's where we're headed now. And it's part of our goal. Didier from New Jersey, do desires originate from us or the universe? Desires are very simply something that come to us from either inside our genetics. Like, for instance, it doesn't matter if you are on a mountaintop all by yourself or if you are in this a huge city, you still will get hungry. You still will want to be warm. You still will want to stay out of the wet, out of the rain. So what we're saying here is there are some desires that came from your parents, from your genetics. By nature, you have them. And there's some desires that come from your environment. In Israel, you like to play football. Everyone in Israel loves to play football. Great. Guess what? We like to play it here. Strangely enough, they mean different things. Totally different games. Yet you like to do this, we like to do this, we call it the same thing. It's something entirely different, and guess why? It's because of the environment that you grew up in Israel or in a lot of our friends from Mexico or South America. Same thing. You enjoy this game of football. I don't know this game of football too well, called soccer here. I do know the game of football called American football here, though, real well. It was our environment that we grew up in. Does that make it better or worse? No, it's just the environment that we grew up in. So we do obtain desires from our environment as well. In fact, they tell us much more than you can imagine. And like I said, I don't want to get in too deep because you have an entire hour and a half on this one subject with Tony. And I'll be touching on it even more in this class. Sam from Massachusetts, USA? Oh, from Maine. Will we learn all this intellectually, or we learn how to feel this? Both. But even more so, Sam. By the way, that's the whole goal in this. The goal is not to learn it. The goal is to begin the sensation of it inside. Can you turn up the air just a little bit? Air conditioning. Thanks. Jason from Tennessee. Hi, Jason. How do we recognize spiritual within ourselves? This moment, you can't. It's in concealment. Why? Well, let's get back to that, because we had someone ask earlier, if you'll remember, how in the world do you do this thing? What in the world do you need to do? We have a problem?
No, just turn the fan.
Oh, the fan? Please. How in the world do we accomplish this goal? What do we do? Now, here's the problem. How do we get from here back up to here? In other words, what is this process from here all the way up here? What's causing me not to be able to be like the Creator? Here, I'm not like the Creator. In fact, I'm the exact opposite. The Creator wants to bestow, I want to receive. What's the problem? What's happening here? Well, when I'm down here, I'm in this state. I run on a software that's very similar to software that's in my computer, constantly making calculations based on one thing: greatest amount of pleasure, least amount of work. That's it. What am I trying to do? What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to receive pleasure every single moment in the most efficient, effective way that I can. This software runs under one law, and it's like gravity. It is a law. I might find ways to get around it, but it's like gravity. When I drop the pen, it's going to drop every single time that I drop it. It's never going to just stay in the air. I can beg it to stay in the air. I can pray to it, almighty pen, stay in the air, and it's still going to drop. It doesn't do me any good. As much as I want it to, it's going to drop. Well, that's a law. And in order for it to stay in the air, I have to apply more force against this thing called gravity, this force called gravity, in order to make it stay in the air. If I turn it loose, it will drop. We all know this. Guess what? This software that we run under is constantly running. And guess what? It's running before we ever make a decision. It's already running before I'm ever conscious in the morning. It never shuts down. It's as if I left the computer running all night long. All day long, and then all the next night too, and it just keeps running. So the minute I have a desire, there isn't any option of whether or not I want to hold up the pen. It's as if it's already been made and it's going to fall, period. I am going to utilize my will to receive no matter what desire my environment floats by me or come from my genetics. Every single time, I don't have an option. Why? Because of this blasted software inside of me. It says greatest amount of pleasure for least amount of work. That's the way I act. And I have no options to do it any other way. So what am I going to do? So I have this one software. And this is software A. And what I really want is a different software. I want a software that's actually software B. And this software doesn't say greatest amount of pleasure for least amount of work. This software, it says, if I can't make an act in order to be like the giver, if I can't make an act that is like my Creator, like Daddy, like the giver, I won't act. It has to be like that every time, or I'm not going to do it. That's the deal. That's a spiritual act. That's doing it. I want to do it like the Creator. That's what qualifies it to be spiritual. What does the Creator do? Spiritual acts. What do I want to do? Spiritual acts. So I want to do what the Creator does. That's my desire. How does the Creator do that? What defines it as being spiritual? Something in which I don't necessarily have a benefit in. Well, now this is a totally different calculation because, now remember, there's a fly in the ointment here. I've already got this software that's constantly running, day and night, 24/7, 365 days a year. And it's saying, greatest amount of pleasure for least amount of work. Greatest amount of pleasure for least amount of work. So what I've got to do is I've got to find a way to shut off this software, remove it from the machine. Maybe not remove it is the right word. Maybe we'll just partition it off would be more accurate for you computer buffs. But let's say it's like removing it. And then I want to install this new software called the Creator software. And this Creator software is how I want to make all my decisions on whether or not I act or not. So what is this thing about switching out this software from greatest amount of pleasure to least amount of work, as opposed to, if I can't do it like the Creator does it, I'm not going to do it. This process is called Kabbalah. The attainment of the ability to do what the Creator does, called bestow. There's another name for the middle of the process, and it's called love thy neighbor as thyself. It's understanding what that means that's important. That's what we're going to be studying in a roundabout way. With Tony, you'll be studying it a little bit more direct. Next, let's take some more questions here. Let's go back to our friends south of the border. I really like that one about the rich people, I got to tell you. Here's a question from Nubia, Colombia. I assume that Nubia is not a name but a place. Normally you're going to have to help me out with that one. What kind of spiritual pleasure are you talking about? I think by reading the article, hopefully we cleared that up. But spiritual pleasure is the pleasure that I sense from doing what the Creator does. In other words, from being like the Creator, from having the status of the Creator. And we can't even imagine what that's like when we're in the concealment of it. Why? It's like trying to imagine having a sixth finger and what use that would be to me. I don't see that it would be any use. And yet, if we went to another planet and there was a Martian with 6 fingers on there, he would say, whoa, boy, are you handicapped. You've only got 5 fingers. Another question from Wilson in El Salvador. Are these people who are only an ornament in this world, or are all the souls purposeful? Every one of them are purposeful. Every one of them. And in fact, they're all purposeful to you, whether you know it or not. Every one of them. Jacob from Mexico. How can we overcome our fears? Depends on the fear you're talking about. Corporeal fears? Every time you have a lack, it's a fear. And there's no way to stop it, Jacob. Jacobo, I assume that's the same thing there. If I lack something and I'm afraid that I won't get it, I'm afraid. But you open this up, so I'm going to follow it just a little bit further here. I can remember when I was 8 years old, and it was my birthday. And the thing that I wanted more than anything else was an erector set. I happened to be in downtown, in the town I grew up in, and looked into the hardware store, and there was my father purchasing something entirely different that I assumed he was getting for me. It was not the erector set. So I didn't know what to think. All I had was pure fear of one thing, that I wasn't going to get that blasted erector set. It wasn't going to happen. I was scared of it, something fierce. Scared that I wouldn't get what I want. To make a long story short, the gift that he was buying was for somebody else. And I received the erector set on my birthday. But something that's more important to gather out of this is that fear is the fear that I feel when of not receiving a pleasure that I want. And that pleasure might be the pleasure of health. I'm scared because I find out that I'm sick with some illness. But there is another side to this coin called fear. And that is, remember this operating program I talked about? That's only the greatest amount of pleasure for least amount of work. In this other program over here, I can have fear there too. What's the goal there? I want to do what the Creator does. If I can't make an act that's like the Creator, if I can't bestow, I won't do it. What's the fear here? Jacobo, imagine this being my fear. Imagine a fear that I won't be able to do what the Creator does. That I won't be able to give the way the Creator gives. Totally different kind of fear. Totally different. Think about that one for a while. Amelia from Mexico. Hi, Amelia. If in order to receive, we need to feel the emptiness, how can we prepare the vessel to receive the wisdom of Kabbalah? Very simple. You're told this over and over again. The Rav, the books, and the group. What does it mean? The environment. Why is the environment important? Because as we just showed a minute ago, this is where I get my desires. And what in the world is going to make me change? What in the world is going to make me change from one type of programming to the other? The desire for it. What's the first thing I'm going to find out? I don't want it. I'll pass. Why would I want this? No reason for it. So I have to want that environment. I have to want something that will motivate me, something that will tell me how important this changing out of the program inside me is, to the point that I too hold it in the highest of esteem. I too have to have this thing because it's so lofty, it's so high, it is so sublime that it's more important than anything else in the world to me. I have to have this. Do I still have to eat, sleep, take care of my family, work, everything else? You bet. It isn't at the expense of this. But this is my goal. This is the reason that I'm on the planet, and I have to have it. And only my environment can give me that. That environment is the teacher that keeps me on line, doesn't let me stray off track in areas where I end up guessing and I'm wrong. Like, will meditation get me Kabbalah, get me spirituality? No. The answer is no every time, yet we still keep getting the questions and arguments about it. Someone wants it to be that so bad, please. No, it's not. So the Rav has to draw one back when they start to get off a little bit. The materials are everything. The materials are literally messages, hints, help sent directly to you, personally, from Kabbalists that are in spirituality. They're saying, here it is. You want to know how? Here it is. And the friends in which that I study with, my friends who also have this incredible desire, I sense that desire in them, and I say, well, hey, I've got to have what they're holding in highest of esteem. Why? Because they've transferred that importance to me. Good question. Ushi from Chile. Hi, Ushi. For those of us who don't belong to any group, how does it affect us to advance in the correction of our soul? Oh, yes, you do. Every single person that's connected on this. Ushi, you've got an incredible group. Right now, there's 2,000 students enrolled in studying there at the Learning Center with you in this class alone. Not the advanced students, not counting the rest, just in this group. 2,000 of them. Do you think that just because that they aren't personally there in Chile, that it has any effect? Not a bit. Not a bit. They can influence you just as much from there, from North America, or from China, or from Australia. We had some friends from Australia on, or for, like Juan here is getting ready to, I'm getting ready to read his question, from Argentina, in your neck of the woods, compared to us, perhaps. Argentina and Chile, I realize there's a little distance there, but most certainly closer than St. Louis, Missouri. So no, please, don't think that. Don't think that you don't have an environment to influence you, because you sure do, and that's why we have a site. We're building a community, a virtual community site for you to be able to participate in and stay connected with all these people that share the same desire. Now, Ushi, this does not mean that you don't participate in environments that require your daily upkeep in order to be able to live, your work environment, your family, and the things that you must have. But this is for this desire. This is for the desire to do what the Creator does, the advancement of the soul. And we have Juan Francisco from Argentina. Hi, Juan. Is Kabbalah a sort of manual of instructions to reach the Creator? Are we born with that, but we just don't know how to read it? No. No, it's not a manual of instruction. Although it has that in it. It is actually the process. That's like saying, okay, I'm at a Ford plant where they build Ford automobiles. Is that plant the manual of instructions? No, it does have a manual of instructions, but it's the process. It's the actual process of building the car. And that's what you're talking about here. And one more, and then we'll switch back over to the questions from the rest of the world. How can we consider a science something that we experience in a subjective way? Tony addressed this just a little bit. That's the whole point. Carlos, you can't. You can't. You have to address it in an objective way. And the only way you can do that is to get outside the will to receive. And that's exactly what the goal is here. Jose Fernando from Atlanta. Hi, Jose. Oh, from USA. Are we creations or emanations? I don't know. Let's see what Baal Shalom has to say about it. We'll be getting started in that in the very next lesson. We'll find out what the Creator is. Actually, we'll find out what the creature is. That'll be in next Sunday's lesson, just to give you a little hint. Let's go to Michelle in Jerusalem. Shalom, Michelle. Did our spiritual connection to Creator become hidden due to some fault of our own? Or was that disconnect predestined? Oh, it was definitely predestined, and it definitely was not our fault. In fact, let's take the word fault out of the whole picture. It was our doing, but not our fault. You're going to find out why in depth, but for now, to give you this short version of this, we chose to be in concealment of the creature, of the Creator, and of His pleasure. We elected it. Why? Because that way we could actually elect to achieve this quality known as holiness, sanctity, the quality of bestowal, the quality of being like the Creator, the quality of doing what the Creator does, the quality of doing it how the Creator does, and for the reason the Creator does it. And not because we know the pleasure that we'll get out of it, but electing it to do it all on our own accord, without some carrot dangling in front of me. Did I read you a carrot? Yes. So what? That's all imaginary. Means nothing. Why? Because in order to be able to do what the Creator does, I have to be willing to not worry about the pleasure, to not be motivated in that direction, to not be trying to get something out of the deal. In other words, to get the pleasure, I have to not be after the pleasure. The only way I can do that is if I don't know that there is pleasure. That's why every religion on the planet requires belief in God. Belief. Only. Why? What God? What God? God's in concealment. We believe God exists. Yeah, sure, everyone. There's billions on the planet that believe God exists. It's one thing to believe it, it's something else to know it. Yet we confuse belief and knowledge all the time. Mistake. So we're in concealment of this. And we're in concealment of something else too. We're in concealment that everything that the Creator does, He does for our own good. Yes? All the time. First of all, we don't even know that He does everything. And second, how do we know that He does it all for our own good? How do we know that everything He gives us is good? Because it sure doesn't seem that way to me. Joseph from Dallas. Hi, Joseph. We were told that during the destruction of the temple, the creature was separated from the Creator and became focused on the will to receive. Why did the creature separated from the creature at that time? Why did the creature separate from the creature? Was that a typo, perhaps? If so, why did we have selfishness even before the destruction of the temple? What's happening in this destruction thing? First of all, we're really big-time corporealizing this, and that's never good, as Tony mentioned. But what's happening in the destruction of a temple? What happened when the temples fell? Not just once, by the way. We all know that. What's happening is a jump in egoism. We're talking about something that's in the preparation period. We're talking about an absolute necessity where it's going through different levels of desire, where the will to receive is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. The destruction occurred for one reason, because it was the people were on a very pure level of desire, and then a whole another level of aviyut was added, because the whole purpose is to not just to correct one small part of the will to receive, but the whole thing. There's a lot more to this, including the reasons for the exodus, for the in slavery, for the diaspora, for everything. And it's all connected to this. But we have selfishness no matter what because of concealment of the Creator and just the sensation of our own will to receive from its corruption into a form where we want to receive only in order to please ourselves. was literally the way we were created. We'll be going through that at the start of next week. Liz from New York City. Hi, Liz. Which senses and how do we cultivate them to perceive and attain the spiritual level of desire? I think we answered that just a few minutes ago. What we're trying to do is here's the deal. This programming over here, that's the egoistic programming, it works in a very specific way. It works in a way of greatest amount of pleasure for least amount of work, and it operates through these senses. Now, this new programming, which is actually, if I cannot do what the Creator does, then I just sit here, I won't do anything. Was you believed, Liz, that it's not connected to 5 senses like this is. It's not just connected with 5 senses. Would you believe that this one's connected to 613 senses? 613 senses. A lot more. But they are only guided by they're only connected with this operating program. They aren't connected with this operating program. So what's one to do here? As we said, this desire, which is to do what the Creator does, have the same operating program as the Creator, has to be developed in me. In fact, it has to become the overwhelming desire in me. It has to be the reason for my existence. Only then do we call it a prayer, and only then is it answered. What does that require? The Rav, the books, and the group. You're going to hear that a lot. John from Lakeside, California. Hi, John. Are these desires, I assume you're talking about spiritual desires, from the primitive child thought that we are not to expand beyond this thought of self-want? And if so, then is this the process to move beyond this? No. No. That's psychology, by the way. It's not Kabbalah, certainly. We can't compare the two. This is the evolution of desire into something stronger, not something that was already embedded within you like that. In a way it is, but not like you're thinking. Don't want us to get too confused here. Regina from New York City. What gave life to the first desire to create a creature and fill it with pleasure? What gave life to the first desire to create a creature and fill it with pleasure? The Creator. The Creator. You want to know more about it? You can't. How can you know more about it? The only thing that we know about the Creator is from when it created us on. The Creator doesn't give us a history book about before there was a creation. So the only way that we can relate to the Creator is from then on. Matt from Sacramento. Hi, Matt. Can learning and using this process be dangerous? Not at all, Matt. Or helpful in corporeality? Matt. It most certainly is not going to help you to have a better marriage, to make more money, to have a better roof over your head, to solve financial problems, to be more well thought of, to be smarter here corporeally. It isn't about attaining better stuff here. And it won't do that at all. So, if that's the goal, that person's really not in the right thing. They're still in the corporeal desire, not this desire that we talked about at the start. Where it cannot be about something corporeally. But just like that, as well, this isn't something that is going to kill you. It isn't something that's going to somehow cause you to be poisoned or something like that either. We're talking about spiritual matters here and the development of the soul, not the corporeal entity. Lewis from New Jersey. Did Adam's desire overcome his ability to receive and force? Did Adam's desire overcome his ability to receive, and force his parting from the Creator? No. In truth, Adam was trying to make an holy act. Adam was trying to give light, to give the sensation of the Creator to his will to receive, thinking that his will to receive could handle it, which was called Eve. It wasn't properly prepared for it, and everything broke. It was an absolute necessity. It had to mix the properties of the Creator with the properties of the creature. We'll get to a lot of that later when we get to the breaking of the world of Nicodemus. How do you, in practicality, change an egoistic chain of desires to an altruistic one? What would be the right type of attitude or action for that to happen? You got a problem. First of all, we need your name. Everyone, please don't send in a question without at least your first name and the state or the country. You don't have to say your first and last name or your specific city if you don't want to, or certainly not your address, but at least put in your first name and your city or your country or state. How do you, in practicality, change an egoistic chain of desires? The only ones that you can relate to at this point, a chain of desires, are corporeal ones. Nothing needs to be changed here. This isn't what you're changing. This is the world of concealment. You can't change the desire to drink water. But there is something you can do. We're talking a lot about it. Tony will be addressing it even more next week, week after. It's called, simple word, Kabbalah. It means intention. Lois from New Jersey. Hi, Lois. Did Adam's desire to overcome his ability? Oh, we answered that. Kara from California. Hi, Kara. I was just in your neck of the woods out in, don't know where in California you live, but San Francisco, which was absolutely beautiful. Is there a physical sensation one gets when studying Kabbalah? We answered that. German from Argentina. So die and reincarnation must be death. So death and reincarnation is not what we know in this world. No, we don't know death and reincarnation in this world. We know that I'm born, I live, and I die. That's all we know. They say, and we only know that through evidence. There isn't any knowledge beyond what our eyes see here. If we want to say what religion says, then we say, oh, no, but part of the person goes to heaven or part of the person reincarnates. That's not what's real here, German. What do we see? We see that this corporeal thing is born and that it grows up, that it gets a job, it has children, it gets an education, it tries to have some type of success in life, it then has grandchildren, and then finally it gets old and it dies. That's all we know. Past that, you have to be beyond this corporeal thing to know what's there. Betty from Cincinnati. Hi, Betty. In the study of Kabbalah, are there any exceptions? I mean, people who are excluded. No. No one's excluded. No such thing. Kabbalah is not about exclusivity. It isn't about who can study. There's a requirement to study. There certainly is. And this requirement stems from a law called no coercion. In other words, you can't make someone study. What has to happen is they have to have a desire to study. They have to want to study. Willie from New York. I've been studying Kabbalah and Buddhism for a year, okay? I find a lot in common. Am I wrong? No, not on the surface, Willie, but to be frank, they're as far as from east as from west once you actually get into the spiritual aspect of them. As long as you're just kind of sticking around here in corporeality, looking at the surface of it, yeah, they look a little similar, but they separate, and they separate very fast. Buddhism is about the suppression of the ego, and Kabbalah is about the development and the utilization of the ego correctly. They're two entirely different things, actually. Opposites. I have no idea how to pronounce this name. Neftali from Florida. Is the Creator controlling our spiritual connection in order to keep us in reaching a level where we will no longer depend on Him, of Him on Him? No. No. To the contrary, the Creator wants you to depend on Him. He wants you to depend on Him to receive spiritual pleasure every single moment, every single second, every single day, for all eternity, not for this simple corporeal existence. And He wants you to receive that pleasure in a manner to where it never stops, and to where you feel good about receiving it, to where you feel like you have His qualities by receiving it. How? That's called Kabbalah. We'll be starting it next week. Monty in D.C., Washington, D.C. Hi, Monty. Does the will to receive anything negate, including spiritual pleasure, negate our perception of the spiritual realm, which I thought consisted solely of the will to bestow? Yes, definitely. The will to receive anything egoistically? Yes. Of course it does. John from Lakeside, California. Apart from the original sin, I assume you mean the breaking of the vessels, Adam and Eve, the apple, the snake. If people have a desire to do basic good, then when people do evil, where do those thoughts come from? Well, what you're getting in here, and if one breaks a commandment, is it not all the same to God that they all carry the same weight? John, what you're getting into here is getting back to corporeality. Remember, Kabbalah is with regard to these desires and spirituality. You're trying to tell me that what we're speaking of here somehow is with what's right or wrong in this animal world here. And I'm saying, no. You're talking about someone murdering somebody, or someone stealing from somebody, or some type of sin that they might commit, or maybe just a white lie. We're not supposed to bear false witness, but what do? I go over here and someone asks me if my wife says, "Oh, is this outfit look okay?" And I say, "Oh my God, that's the worst looking outfit in the world," because I want to be honest with her, and all of a sudden I get hit in the head with cast iron skillet for being so honest. Is this what I should be doing? And in that breaking the commandment. This is all corporeality, and it's all based upon judgments here in corporeality, and it has absolutely nothing to do with Kabbalah. Here, there's nothing but someone receiving in order to receive. There's nothing here but the ego. That's why this is a world of concealment. And in truth, it's all an operation that's forced upon one where they don't have any kind of choice in the matter. And in truth, they don't sin here. They can't. One doesn't have a choice in their action. In other words, this is really a question with regard to freedom of will. And again, you'll hear a lot more from that from Tony. Sandra in Boston. Hi, Sandra. Don't you go to the spiritual desire because you get disappointed with the material world by not pursuing your dreams? Sure. Of course. Someone starts to get some kind of, that they're always disappointed. They never get what they want. They actually want money, honor, knowledge, power, family. They're coming to try to search for all sorts of different reasons. But the ones that actually end up the serious student are the ones that aren't coming out of trying to find some solution, some spiritual solution to a corporeal problem. That won't work. And they'll be disappointed. Kabbalah is about one thing and one thing only. It is about the attainment of qualities outside of the way our will to receive is built. It is about fulfilling the reason that one is on the planet. And it is about going through this process consciously, as opposed to being shoved from behind consciously to go through it, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, in a process that is painful, bloody, suffering, horrible situation that you've gone through for thousands of years already. And it's about taking that process and speeding it up, accelerating the process, but not from the point of view of more blows, from the point of view of being pulled from the front. Actually having the desire for it and doing it for that reason, staying ahead of this push from behind called suffering. Kabbalah isn't this process of the attainment of the qualities of the Creator is not something that's an option, even though it seems like it is. It's only a function of suffering for some people. For other, and by the way, that person just was speaking about that. For other people, they feel a distinct sensation, something that they're missing, a type of pleasure that they can't possibly get in their corporeal desires, and they're chasing it for this reason. Either way, it's egoistic, by the way. It doesn't matter which. And either way, it doesn't matter. Both types of people will grow here. Especially when they figure out what's what here. Figure out what they're trying to accomplish here. Figure out what is the meaning of my life. What am I trying to do right now? What am I starting today? What's this really all about? There are many questions that we can't answer all of them, obviously, because we're out of time. Folks, we have a forum. I strongly encourage each and every one of you to attend that forum, to ask these questions, post these questions there. We have moderators that are happy to answer your question. Tony will come on occasion to answer a question. So will I. So will our other instructors, Igal, Mark, Dave, William. We have other people that are sitting there waiting to be able to help you with these questions. So don't just say, oh, well, I didn't answer my question, tough. No. We want to answer them all. So please, do post them on the forum. Tony will be with you next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central, and then, of course, we'll be back the following Sunday here from St. Louis. And so until then, we wish you all the best, and we will see you this coming Wednesday evening. Good night.